Hello, everyone, and welcome to Magic Monday. Hopefully you can hear me and the sort of magic that's happening this morning. There it is, my webcam. Yay. Maybe that was bad magic happening and that I couldn't get my camera to work. So anyway, we'll get started, and depending on how much participation we have from all of you will depend on how long we go this morning. Magic is a magical and fun topic, but it's also sort of an obscure topic, and people may wonder what magic has to do with certainly with the relationship. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go along here. So, now I can't change my slide. I'm going to see if, there we go, magic. Hermann Hesse says, you know quite well deep within you that there is only a single magic, a single power, a single salvation, and that is called loving. And I think after we talk about magic and all of its different forms and sort of our intrigue with magic, that we'll see that the simplest form of magic really comes back to recognizing magic in the ordinary moments, and certainly in our love relationships. When we talk rationally about the miracle of everyday life, about what we really secretly desire is real magical power. And I think this harkens back to those of you who maybe watched any kind of magical shows growing up, like Bewitched was popular when I was a kid, and even science fiction like Star Trek, where they would have occasional magical things going on. Certainly the magic in Harry Potter is incredibly evocative and exciting to think about being able to cast spells and move things around the way we want to. So we are desiring some real transformation in life when we think about magic and how fun it is. And if you want love, wealth, or some kind of fantastic career accomplishment, you can repeat this phrase, O Bada Barik Eliki Senep. That's what we all want from magic, right? And this translates to if only it were that simple, which is a translation from several obscure languages. But the idea of an incantation, the idea that we can cast spells on people, gives us some inner thrill that we're going to be able to change and create a mutable life. So the idea conjures fantasies that are fulfilled, but the stark reality of actual reality can dash those childish dreams, especially when we're living in the day-to-day stresses and challenges that we're faced with, and just getting from home to work some days or completing a project. We're not really thinking of fantastical, magical exploits. And yet, when we're seeking romance and we're seeking love relationship, we're really hoping that some sort of deep magic will occur in the relationship. And even over time, we want to keep the magic in our relationship. We have difficulty when that sort of magical flair disappears from us. And we know that, this constant search for magic, for excitement, constant stimulation, and validation is not very mature, but it doesn't negate the fact that it makes us giddy, elated, or excited. And really, the real work of magic, I think, comes in mature relationships and in working in relationship over time. Slide change, please. Some people practice sex magic, and I don't know if any of you have ever heard of that before, but it's about harnessing the chaos of orgasm into what are called sigil spells and the effect some visualized attainment might have. And sigils are intentions that we are meant to evoke during moments of chaos in the world of magic. So anything that disrupts the normal flow of energy, to redirect that energy, is considered a sigil. So imagine if you are, driving down the street and you're about to see a car accident, and you take all of your powers of imagination, which is really intention, and you imagine the accident not happening or the car veering off. That setting of intention will disrupt the natural flow of energy in the world of magic. And sometimes this can be very powerful and very useful and will create the desired effects for us, but we're also limited in our humanity by knowing what's right for us and what isn't. So certainly if we want to obstruct an accident from happening and we try to use a sigil and it doesn't happen, then voila, we're magicians. But if we're trying to influence the outcomes of our personal relationships and our personal fate or destiny, we may be disappointed in our abilities for magic. But you never know. You should give it a try. When we attempt to bind the universe through magic, we can sometimes become bound ourselves because our ambitions are ill-considered. We are trying to manipulate or change the way our lives are going. And we supplant life's infinite magic with our hyper-exposed or hyper-focused expectations of how it should be. So I know there was a time in my life when, I was very interested in tarot cards and runes and going to psychics and things of that nature, always trying to figure out what lied ahead for me, as opposed to being present in the sheer ordinary magic of day-to-day life. We could consider that this computer and the capacity to view each other via camera is a form of magic, and I'm sure at some point in time we would have thought to have been sorcerers because of the extraordinary technology or extraordinary magic that technology brings us. And when it comes to our sexuality, we have to consider that our sexuality is already enthralling. It's a meaningful energy, but to invest imagined magical powers into our sexual relationships can really start to tip the scales towards crazy making because we are expecting superhuman powers from ourselves and from our partners, which isn't fair, and it takes us out of reality. So there's a fine distinction between what I call ordinary moments of magic, ordinary miracles, if you will, versus some sort of supernatural, fantastic fantasy or even delusional proposition that something's going to be extremely different than what it is. So this is magic is a more nuanced way of understanding life. It shouldn't be something that, completely takes us off or running off in left field. So any questions about magic or sex magic at this point? You can text those in to me if you'd like. Just type them in. So no magic questions? Okay. Well, there are plenty of people who practice sex magic. We already talked about that, sorry. So I need to change the slide. Compared with rational linear thought, the idea of magic offers another way of thinking, and we talk about this or think about this in terms of psychological magic. If we can integrate it without being swept away, and that's what I think I'm talking about, is that there's nothing wrong, and it's perfectly fun and interesting to consult astrological charts or to go for a tarot card reading or see a psychic. If we can integrate what we learned from those various ways of divining the future with our own personal reality. But if we're only living in this divination, for example, in the world we live in today, we might get caught up in living in a fantasy world or a love-addicted world because we're trying to move things around on an ethereal plane that, most humans are not very good at. So let's make sure that we're thinking about integration when we think about these propositions of magic and even ordinary magic. So to imagine magic means that we're embodying the other person, the enchantment of human relationship that takes us outside of ourselves. And this happens sometimes in early dating when we're imagining what it would be like to live with that person, or to have their last name, or to walk down the aisle with them, or to live happily ever after with them. That type of embodied magic, in a way, is also, a form of empathy. But it allows us a little bit more than just empathy. It allows us to drift into the fantasy of possibility, where magic can absolutely lie if you're falling in love with someone and you have an intention of being with them over time. The challenge, again, is to integrate those magical thoughts into the reality of how the person's behaving, how we feel in relation to them, what our sex life is actually really like, who they are to us as human beings, not somebody we've imbued with magical powers or idealized or put on a pedestal. What magic can you bring into your relationship today is a really good question. How do we bring that magical quality of love and affinity and that which is fantastical into our relationships on any given day? And magic represents another way of thinking. That's probably the best and simplest way to think about it. Because when we think about things sort of in the box and the way we always imagine them, then we're going to be challenged with sometimes staying stuck or not thinking out of the box, as the saying goes. But when you can really think of another way of thinking, then you can start to play in the realms of magical thinking. So take with permission to free yourself of inhibition and fear. When you give yourself permission to let go of your inhibitions, let go of your fears, what emerges from you? What unknown depths of your being do you share? And do you share it in love? And take a moment to think about that. And if anybody out there is willing to share the answer to that question, that would be sort of a fun conversation for us to engage in. So what is, when you let go of your inhibition, which is a low arousal state, it can also be a shame state in the body. It's a place where people feel depressed or shame for certain. When you can let go of inhibition or fear, which is a more hyper-aroused, hyper-vigilant state, always looking out for danger or lack of surety about yourself, also can be a shame state. What emerges from the depths of your being? What would you most like to share with somebody in love? What feels most magical to you? Oh, I thought somebody texted something in, but I don't see anything. Oh, here's something. Pure presence without any distraction. So when Eric frees himself of inhibition and fear, he's saying he feels pure presence without any distraction. And that's beautiful because that momentary presence, that ability to be in pure present awareness, in suspended attention, I believe is a place where great, great magic happens. And you can make this experiment by finding a comfortable place to sit in nature, usually in your backyard or looking out a window and watching the clouds. It's been very rainy here in LA, so it's been moody and cloudy. And just taking even 5 minutes to take a breath of air and just be present in what is, you'll see that there's an amazing world of abundance and beauty, prosperity, love, and certainly magic right here and right now. It's just the noise and the stress and our own personal anxieties and shame that steal it from us every minute of the day. John says, when I lose myself in shame, it's hard to pull myself out. It requires meditation and surrender. And yes, shame is the most powerful affect there is, and shame is a proposition of extreme dysregulation in our nervous systems. And so having a way to work with that debilitating shame is essential, and one way is to be in relationship with someone who loves you and who can listen to you and mirror back to you the beauty they see in you, that they can hold, that you sometimes cannot hold. Oftentimes this requires the skill of a trained professional like a therapist, and a love relationship where someone sees you for who you are in that moment, who can regulate you, in other words, back to a state of who you really are, back to a coherent, integrated state, is in itself a form of magic. If we were to say we perform magic with each other on any given day, I would say that would probably be our most powerful piece of magic, is that we can bring each other back to a state of integration and coherence, to a place of communion. And so having to do it yourself by way of meditation is better than nothing, but truly to have another human, another person that can really, really see you is the best magic and the best medicine there is. Well, thank you both for risking putting that out there. I appreciate it. And if any other brave soul wants to let us know what happens when they put inhibition and fear aside and what emerges from the depths of your being, then you can see what you really have to share in love. You can see what magical powers you have to give, and when you give that, you're giving to the other, because we are intensely relational creatures. Our brains are wired for attachment and love, and we desperately need each other in order to be integrated and to have a solid sense of self. Otherwise, we feel weird or alone or alienated, or we suffer because we're afraid of success, but we so badly want to be seen, or we just feel worthless and hopeless. All of those feelings, all of those are indicators of profound shame, chronic shame that most of us have had to live with due to either high levels of emotional abuse or physical abuse, or neglect by insensitive parents who were immature themselves. So compared with rational, linear thought, the idea of magic, oops, what happened to my slide? Tom, are you there? My slide just got changed. I don't know how to go back.
Yeah, that was the old slide, wasn't it, or no? Let me see.
No. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was the old slide.
Right.
Okay. So let's see. We magically summon others to mind just by our thoughts. Now, how many times have you thought of somebody and they call and you say, oh, my God, I was just thinking about you. Or you think about somebody and you run into them at a coffee shop or in the shopping mall. This is high level of intuition, I believe, but we can also think about it as magic. And our parents, caretakers, teachers, friends, and lovers enfold us in the magic of their own mentality. So imagine that. So when we hold each other in mind, that's called mentalization in the psychotherapy world. But if I hold you in mind, and I hold you in mind in a way where I can imagine you doing great things, I can imagine your full potential, the very best of you coming forward, then that supports you in unfolding in those ways that you can't do by yourself. And that is the purpose of community, the reason we're in each other's lives, so we can hold each other in mind with the greatest of success. Somebody writes, true magic is the awareness that we are one with the field of pure potential. We are part of the world, and the world is part of us, and love is embedded in that truth. Thank you, Raven. That's a beautiful definition of magic, as good as any as I've ever seen. I think that's really kind of a fun and useful idea, too, is if you were to create your own definition of magic, how would you define that? So again, the awareness that we are one with the field of pure potential. And I think that's what I'm talking about when I talk about holding each other in mind. When we hold each other in mind, we can hold the possibility for reaching our pure potential. So if I see you without your trauma, without your shame, and that's not negating the pain that you suffered, it's actually listening to it and really, really feeling it with you. In fact, bringing it to reality in life, because as a child it was negated, or it was sort of translated out of existence, as one psychologist says. But to really be with is a way of meeting in that field of pure potential. And if the world is part of us, and love is what the world is made of, then we're all embedded in that one singular truth. And so that is a huge meta concept. And the danger of that concept is that if we have a shame-based sense of self, then we can get into these grandiose ideas of being one with the universe, that our pure potential is the potential of the universe, which I believe it is. But if I feel shame about myself and I can't walk out of my door, it's not going to do me much good. And that's where the individual work of psychotherapy comes into play, so that we have moments of magic and moments of this magic reality in therapy or in our program or with the sponsor or with a trusted other, so that the shame begins to heal, and that's when we reach our full potential. Yes, and healing shame is the first step only when we face our shadows, which is definitely true, that we can only move into transformational processes when we heal our shame first and foremost. But let's not forget that the pure potential of the world, of the universe, awaits us because we're made of the same stuff. So much of what we take for granted would seem like magic to past generations or even to us at past stages of our lives. So, like I said, this computer would have seemed completely magical in the 1800s, early 1900s, or even 1950 for that matter. But for us to be able to, speak and to communicate so freely through technology is certainly magical. And the future will take more magic. And with loving practice, by planting the seeds of healthy communion and community, we can make that magic real. So when you think about what kind of magic you want in your life, so first of all, I guess going back to defining what magic means to you would be the starter. And then the second would be, what are the seeds you want to plant in order to make that magic real? How will magic happen? Someone says magic is only possible outside of my intellectual and emotional self. I would say magic is possible in the realm of our intuition. So intellectually, the left brain will shut down the notion of magic and debunk it, because the left brain's always looking for that which is logical, linear, which can be proven by science. The intuitive, the passion, the creative is the proposition of the right brain emotional self. And that's where the proposition of magic lies, because it happens in these moments of meeting with another, or intuition, or synchronicity. All of those things are in the realm of what I would call ordinary magic. And so to be able to embrace that means that we're embracing ourselves, our own sort of magical or witch-like abilities, if we want to play with words in that way too. So when we tap into the mysterious forces of love, which someone said is, love is embedded in the truth, of the world. And love, some say, is all there is. Others say that our essential nature is nothing but love. And when we can tap into those forces, which cannot be named because poets and writers for centuries and forever have been trying to define the meaning of love, we will find our own mysterious magic. And that's because we have to define it for ourselves. No one else can define it for us. And our inner being, like a magic mirror, reveals itself in every outer moment. So if you see the glass as half empty or half full, it depends on how half empty or half full you feel inside. If you walk outside and you see the day as magical, because it's so spectacular in its beauty, then that is a reflection of how you feel about yourself internally. If you can't see the day, if you cannot even see yourself, or you can't see yourself in a mirror, that means that you are likely extremely traumatized and need to get help for your own healing, so that you can step into this matter of magic and your pure potential. So don't shortchange yourself, and be careful of the cynicism that says it's impossible. That cynicism is there because it's a barrier against shame. It's a barrier against feeling the profound fragmentation of the self that can occur when there's been awful abuse or neglect that ensued from childhood that just has not been repaired. And that reparation process can feel frightening, and it can feel like it's hopeless sometimes also. But I can only speak from my own experience in my own journey, and also working with many, many people, that when we stick to our personal journey of healing, no matter how you do it, magic will occur. You'll start to feel whole and real and recover and reclaim your own true self, which is an act of magic in and of itself, if you ask me. And when you engage in a sexual act, you vibrate, radiate, and intend it to reverberate beyond the body parts, beyond the sublime moment's thrill, to sustain an open heart. So what exactly does that paragraph mean? Well, when you engage in a sexual act, you definitely vibrate because the body's activating itself in a myriad of ways, neurochemical, biological, psychological ways. So there's a literal physical vibration in the system. And there's a radiant energy that comes with that. And when you are connected emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, there's a reverberation beyond our body parts, beyond the moment's thrill. There is something that happens that allows us to sustain an open-heartedness with ourselves, with our lovers, with the universe, for some people even with God itself. There is a recognition and a transcendence of the self into this place of magical union that can really only come from sex. There are other ways to have magical experiences that I've been talking about and we've been chatting about, but probably the major road to magic is likely through our sexual union and communion with another human being from this place of true open-heartedness, this place of wanting to touch the divine in ourselves and in each other. And that can feel magical beyond expectation. So consider that when you're also considering what you want sexually and what you want in a relationship, so that you can start to marry the changes you're making in your psychological process and in your healing process with what's happening in your relationship. Someone says, Alex, I like this so much. Healing our sexuality is a step in our process of reclaiming our innocence, for sure, which is true open-heartedness. And yes, it is. And I've always said that when we start to reclaim our sexuality, there's a wholesome quality to it. There is a feeling of innocence to it, maybe even an awkwardness, which should be invited and embraced. Because when we've been tampered with or abused in any way sexually, covertly or overtly, there is a defensiveness that comes. The body shuts down in certain ways. Dissociation ensues, and shame fills in the spaces where dissociation is. So we can't really feel our feelings when we're dissociated. Our left brain has a story about what's going on, but really we feel this shame-based or even disgust-based sense of self. And certainly people who are sexually addicted have a shame-based sexuality, or worse yet, they feel just disgusting about themselves. And that is directly proportionate to how badly someone has been abused. So if you feel shame, if you feel disgust, that is not your fault, it's not your doing, it's the way your nervous system got set up a very, very long time ago. And it's your responsibility as an adult to repair what's been broken. And I say it's your responsibility because Carl Jung said, if you want to change the world, start by healing yourself. And so we can sit around and complain about how horrible people are and how bad relationships are, or we can really take a good look at ourselves. And I think Michael Jackson said, take a look at yourself and make the change also. So consider that it's your responsibility to restore your own personal magic, that nobody can do that for you, even though when we fall in love, we feel like, oh my God, this is magic, and this is going to make me feel better, and I am whole now, and I'm complete, and yay, somebody else is going to save me. And that's, of course, a little simplistic and reductionistic. Not everybody thinks that, but if you do think that, be careful. Be careful that you are not using someone else's magic or their magic mirror in order to get you off the hook from really looking closely at the places where you've been hurt. All right, so any thoughts about any of that thus far? All right, well, today I want you to consider performing daring acts of self-love, daring acts of magic, whatever you would consider that to be. So if it means that you're going to do something with the flourish, whether it's walk in the rain or, tromp through the snow wherever you are, do something that has to do with your own self-love and a way to see if you can get in touch with some moment of vitality in your body, some moment of joy that mirrors magic, to find that spark. Because if you cannot find that spark, it means that you're in trouble. It means that you're in psychological and physical, biological trouble if you can't feel into your body. And if you can't feel into your body, that means that you've been traumatized and you need to get help for that trauma. If you can feel into your body, then jump for joy. Be in gratitude for yourself, for the people around you that have stewarded you, for the long, hard journey that you've been on, and for how your work is paid off. So I hope today is a magical Monday for you. And if you have any questions, remember you can always text or email. And you can always contact centerforhealthysex.com if you have questions about love or relationship issues. Patsy from Vancouver says, balance between being vulnerable to others and self-loving before being vulnerable to others is tricky sometimes. And that's true. That is one of the paradoxes of life. One of the many, many paradoxes is that we have to be vulnerable to others in order to reveal ourselves. And you have to make sure that you're choosing somebody who can regulate you in that vulnerability, meaning they will care about you in that vulnerability, that they will hold your vulnerability like a cherished, fragile object. They're not going to stomp on it or shame you or hurt you in any way, shape, or form. But they will reflect back the beauty of that vulnerability to you by saying things like, thank you for sharing that, or I had no idea that's what you're struggling with, or it means so much to me that you told me that because I too struggle with X, Y, or Z. So when we make ourselves vulnerable to others, we're opening the door. We're making ourselves naked to say, this is who my true self really is. And are you going to help sort of love me into integration? Are you going to care for me in a way that makes me feel whole and good? Or are you going to throw a jab and shame me that has me closing up even further again? And that part is on us. That's our responsibility to make sure that we choose a trusted other so that we are not hurting ourselves or reenacting our trauma again. And I think that's probably where you mean it gets tricky, Patsy. I'm not sure, but you can let me know if I was correct about that. So careful who you get naked with, so to speak. Peter says, this is what has saved me so far, putting myself out there, and I would say that's really, really true. The more you put yourself out there, the more you say, hey, this is who I am, warts and all, to someone who can say, wow, I get that, or I have warts too, or thank you for being so honest, that is the thing that allows you to keep coming out more authentically, especially if you were shamed terribly as a child. Coming out, risking putting yourself out there is treacherous business. But the healing process is doing it with people that will tend to you with kid gloves, who will love you back into reality, so to speak, who will remember you back into society. And someone says there is such thing as dangerous territory if you're in a marriage and only you take the magic journey. And I would say that's true, because one person is endeavoring to sort of move things forward in a place of love and caring, and the other person has their heels dug in and they're staying in resentment or anger or contempt. And until that person's upset can be straightened out, it can be cleared up, there can come to a place of agreement and resting and trust, then there's no way to embark on the magic journey together, because you've got somebody weighing you down. And if you keep doing that, you've got to ask yourself whether you're reenacting your own trauma in some way also. So you have to look at both sides of the dynamics always. And Peter says, again, being vulnerable after being shut down has been scary but necessary. And I would say yes. The only way out of the pain of isolation is through the fire of authenticity. There is no other way out of it. I mean, this has been written about from the beginning of time, when St. John of the Cross wrote about the dark night of the soul, that the only way through the pain is just that, through the flames of the pain, and that's what delivers us into wholeness, brightness, love, whatever metaphor you want to use for feeling integrated and alive again. So don't underestimate the power of relationships in creating magic. The power of relationship in creating all things good in our lives. Even though relationships are difficult, they're loaded with paradox, they're fraught with pain, they can be incredibly difficult and annoying. Without relationship, we do not thrive and we won't survive. Peter says that the light is so bright now. Yes, the light can be blinding now sometimes, right? And if you find yourself, in moments of joy with tears streaming down your face, or moments of elation for no reason, then you know that in some cases the promises of Alcoholics Anonymous has come true, or in other cases that you have reached a place of integration. That would be the place of psychology, but in the world of language of spirituality, you've reached a place of enlightenment. That enlightenment is that power of being purely present, of being purely vulnerable, of being willing to let your heart break open 1,000 times a day as you see incredible suffering on the planet and unbelievable magic and miracles taking place. It's that beauty, that band of vitality that makes us feel so incredibly alive and that our lives are worth living. So, any other thoughts or questions before we wrap this up?
Hey, Alex, this is Tom.
Hello.
Hey, Tom Bliss. I'm a co-author with Alex. I shared with you a story, but I actually had a question this week. When I was young, in my 80s, I actually had taken a psychic course. And they taught us
in your 80s or in the 1980s?
In the 1980s, yeah.
Okay.
And they taught us techniques for like love spells, And so I had a love spell, and I wanted to date someone who trined each of my main 3 astrological placements. So that's my sun, my moon, my rising sign. And I wanted them to trine it within an orb of 5 degrees. I mean, it's very rare. It happens for like 10 minutes every few years that someone might possibly be born into that constellation.
Can you explain to us the word trine that you're using?
Trine is it's a aspect from one planet to another that is 120 degrees apart, and and it's considered a very favorable position. And so I thought, in my limited mind at the time, I thought that would, that's what I want. That means we'd get along. And
I see.
within a few weeks of casting that spell, I met this guy, and I have to say I was repulsed by him, and in my head was like, I would never date someone like that. But we started talking. He revealed that he had those exact placements, which blew me away. Like, it happened so fast, so rare that I would meet someone like that. He became my first boyfriend, but it was such a terrible relationship. I mean, I grew a lot, but he was abusive, he cheated. It was a painful relationship.
Oh dear, yeah.
And yeah, so it was kind of like the monkey's paw. Like, I make a wish, but it's like, I don't know what to wish. I don't know what's best for me, and I think also I was kind of blinding myself to my intuition to follow through on this kind of omen.
Sure, right. That's great.
Yeah. So that's my question. I mean, how do we kind of balance intuition with I guess these kind of omen thoughts or these symbolic thoughts or our
Right. Well, I think, when you have a feeling of revulsion in relation to someone else, that is such a visceral reaction. And we now think of the heart and the gut as the second and third brain because of the amount of neuronal networks that surround both of them. And we are a mind body. Our mind develops in relation to how our body is treated from infancy, because in the beginning we only have a body. That's it. There's no brain to speak of, and it's developing through the body and through the mother's mind body. So the social environment is encoding the infant's system, and as we grow, those systems become more complex naturally. So if you have this fantasy, this ideal, and you cast a spell based on an astrological chart, you're trying to control the universe in some ways. You're trying to control an outcome. And so there's some magic in that because you actually got what you wanted. But I think the wisdom comes from seeing that I got what I wanted, but then feeling what you're feeling in your body, which is, I don't want this at all. And I think we always should privilege our visceral sense. That's the best antenna we have. Sometimes it can be that we have this idea about a car or a trip or naturally a person or a job that we want. Let's take a job. You could have, created an incantation for a job, and this idea that it's the perfect job for you, and then you get the interview and you get there and you meet people and you see where the place is located, and everything about it feels viscerally wrong. In that case, I would say it's not right for you. And I think, when you had this experience, you were in your 20s and probably not probably, you weren't as mature as you are now, or as I know you to be now. And so you overrode your good judgment, your gut feeling, your intuition, so that you could have this experience to find out or remember that you will always follow your gut now. And that's why I said earlier that we have to hold these omens, these experiences of magic lightly and integrate them into the truth of who we actually are. We cannot live our lives by pulling runes every day and deciding whether we're going to leave our house or not, or pulling a tarot card every week and deciding whether we're going to leave our house or not. That's a very limited way of using omens and signs and symbols. I think when we are integrated as human beings, we see these signs and symbols all the time, and we hold them loosely and just recognize them as sort of, of course, there's my intuition, or there's a knowing that I had. And that helps us start to hone and trust ourselves in a deeper way also. So on that note, I want to remind all of you that you are your best magician. You are your best instrument of divination. You are your best source of knowing in any way, shape, or form. And so take that with you today as you practice your magic on Monday. And I look forward to seeing you next month. Don't forget that our book, Mirror of Intimacy, is now available on Amazon, and our beautiful hardcover version is available also. We've been selling quite a bit of those, and I want to remind you also that we have a limited number of these for sale, so don't forget to buy them now while you can, and that's on Amazon.com, Mirror of Intimacy. All right, take good care and be good witches and wizards. Bye-bye.